At Dot & Company, we believe that all agencies deserve amazing account managers and that all of those account managers deserve to be supported, encouraged, and loved on. That's why we started CAM Community, a membership only for account managers. And inside, you'll gain access to the exact training we use to train our own client-facing account managers, but also access to all of our SOPs, processes, and live trainings on a variety of topics. If you're an account manager, this is the place you've been waiting for. Learn more at dotandcompany.co/CAM community. Welcome back to the Happy Clients podcast. Today, I'm super excited to bring Todd on the show. He is a 20-plus year investment banker, and he advises businesses specifically for founders and CEOs, like a lot of our listeners, to help them exit their businesses. And he creates such an amazing experience for his clients. I have actually met a lot of people who have worked with him or know of people that have worked with him, and he is such an amazing resource in our space. So I'm excited to talk all things, maximizing your value in your company and how he helps businesses just like all of our listeners do that. He's also the host of the Second Bite podcast, where you can listen to some of his clients that he's helped exit, or you can learn the strategies that you might need in order to, maybe exit or just optimize the value of your company. So let's get into today's episode. Meet Todd Taskey.
Welcome to the Happy Clients podcast, brought to you by Dot & Company. Whether you're a virtual assistant, an agency owner, or a client-facing account manager, we all deal with clients. Lucky for you, client management is what we do best. Now, let's dig in, chat cam life, and have some fun along the way. Cheers to Happy Clients.
Welcome, Todd, to the Happy Clients podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here.
Cool. Well, we don't talk a lot about M&A on this podcast, but I'm excited to dig in. It's always been something that fascinates me because it feels like it's this whole different planet in our agency world. So Todd, why don't you kind of fill our listeners in on what you do, how you started, and how you support agencies?
Yeah, so for most of our clients are somewhere usually between $1 million and $5 million of EBITDA, right, which is net profit. Most of them have a successful agency, like a lot of your clients and a lot of your listeners. And so the question becomes, what do I want to do next? How do I grow faster? How do I do something more important? And so we help with that. We help with transactions that allow clients to get real liquidity at close. And oftentimes, or almost always, they'll get equity in the new company as well. And the hope is that that equity will be significantly larger and significantly more valuable than continuing as a smaller agency and growing the business that way.
Mm-hmm. And so why would an agency want to sell? Like, what are some of the examples of agencies you work with?
There's a couple buckets of reasons, right? One of them is this isn't going well. I can't retain clients. I can't do this. I can't build a sales team, whatever it might be. Those aren't good reasons because nobody wants to buy a bucket of problems, right? I'll give you an example. We have a podcast as well. Your listeners might be interested. It's called the Second Bite podcast. And the second bite is a reference to what I just described. When I sell my business, I get cash and I get stock. And the hope is that that stock in the future in the larger company will be worth more, but that will be my second bite at this apple. So as an example, there's a interview that we did with Ned McPherson from a company called Endrock. And that's a good example. That was just back in, a few months ago. And Ned has a great business that does conversion rate optimization. Ned has at 40-ish clients. He's growing rapidly. He does really good work. And he was acquired by a company called Power Digital out of San Diego. Power has 200 clients that need conversion rate optimization. Power has a dozen salespeople. They have a tremendous infrastructure. They have HR, they have finance. They have big plans to continue to grow that business. And so when Ned considered his future, he said, geez, if I could get a chunk of cash and a chunk of stock in Power Digital, that would be fantastic. In addition to that, I've got this whole sales team running around selling my services. I've got access to all these customers that I couldn't get to before. And it's easier and it's better. And he's got a big C-suite position with the company. We sold a company a couple of years ago that does outsourced BDR work, business development work. We sold them to a private equity group, and my client kept 47% of the business because they wanted some cash. That's always nice. But what they want to do is grow a much bigger business, and it's expensive when you do that with your own money. Since then, and that was just about 2 years ago, they've acquired 2 other businesses. One of them was another client of mine. And so the business is not only much larger, but they've acquired a performance agency. They could also acquired a web dev and marketing agency. So they're rounding out their arc of services that they can provide to clients, which will make their clients stickier, bigger wallet share, greater retention, and all of those attributes make a company more valuable.
Cool. So let's say someone's listening to this, they're running their agency, they're in that 1 to 5 million EBITDA, and they are saying, okay, I get that. Like what you just said, if you want to grow a bigger business, it's a lot more expensive with your own money. Right. And they're thinking, okay, like this is interesting. This makes sense. This is something that I want to explore. What are some of the things that the business needs to have in place to ensure they're going to get the maximum value for what they've built?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So first of all, I put out an article in January that talks about at that size, $2 million of EBITDA, or maybe even smaller, there's a lot of things happening outside of your agency that might have more impact on your value than what you do inside your agency. For example, if I go back to that Endrock example, the people at Power Digital desperately wanted conversion rate optimization, desperately. And now they have it. So that window is now closed for them as one buyer of conversion rate optimization. So there's moments in time where unique opportunities come up where really good buyers need capability. So that's one, and that's tricky because that's happening outside of the things that I know how to focus on, right? Other than that, to maximize value, it's all the stuff that you know that you want to have a good business, right? I don't want to have customer concentration. Probably the 2 biggest things are your retention, your customer or revenue retention, and how much of your revenue is recurring. And that comes down to doing really good work for people. If you do really good work for people, that resonates in a more profitable business and longer client retention and all those things that a buyer is going to want to have. And then the other key to that is, we sold a business a couple years ago that was actually just a little bit below $1 million, but they did email marketing for e-commerce customers only. So it was this really narrow sliver, and they were a Klaviyo partner. And so from that standpoint, we were able to focus on businesses that needed to add, if you think about somebody's offering in an arc of services, if they're missing that Klaviyo piece or that email piece, or if they want to be a real good e-commerce provider, that was a benefit to that group to have somebody like that, even though it was smaller than they would typically do in a transaction. So being really focused early on, especially as you're growing an agency, makes it easier, I think, to grow that business, right? To really tell your end customer, we know all about your business in the industry and what makes companies like you successful. And that becomes more attractive to an end buyer, especially if you want to stay on, have a bigger platform, and be able to grow within that larger platform.
So that kind of leads me into my next questions. I think a lot of the M&A that's out there talks a lot about getting a full-on like new person running the company, right? So someone comes in, they buys your whole company, and then you move on. But what you do a lot of is a piece of that business, right? So maybe the founder or the owner is still going to be running the business. But when we're thinking about the sellability or getting the most value for the business, how involved should the business owner be? Or what are some things we need to think about as an agency owner still running the business if an exit is on the radar?
Great question again. So all these deal trophies over my shoulder are transactions. 95% of them, the owners are still there. And the owners are having more fun now than they have before. Because almost like you're offering, all the nonsense that you have fallen into as you run a business, largely finance and HR and accounting and payroll and things like that get taken away from you. So people like that a great deal. I have people with a $2 or $3 million EBITDA business. And when they tell me, I'm not that active in the business, I say to them, nobody believes you. I don't even believe you, right? And I represent you.
Interesting.
So you are more important to the business than you think. We don't have to pretend that you're not. It's okay that you are. And from that standpoint, the question becomes, what is your highest and best use that drives most value inside of your agency? And how do we get a good buyer? We'll ask, how do we get you to do just that? How do we get rid of all the other stuff? And then for our client, your listener, if somebody says, listen, we're going to give you a chunk of cash, we're going to give you stock in our company, and we're going to let you go back to just doing this, none of the other stuff that you hate. That becomes quite compelling. So rather than pretend I'm not important in the business, be prepared to answer the question, what's your highest and best use? And on every call we do, the buyer always asks, Taylor, what do you want to do? And when you can answer that succinctly, that's the most important thing, because it's not that attractive to buy $1 million EBITDA business if the owner leaves. Because if the owner leaves, I know the second level people are probably going to leave. And the second level people leave, I know a lot of the customers are going to leave, and on from there. So most of the folks that we work with, the thing I hear often is, I didn't know you could do this. I didn't know I could sell my business and still work here and still have a big equity upside and still be an important member of the team. So that's an exciting thing for people as they realize the question becomes, what's the best path forward? And so just to use one example, let's say you're really, really good at doing SEO. Your retention gets better, your wallet share gets better, your recurring revenue gets better if you also offer paid media or paid social or email or anything or all of those things. Your retention will get better with every additional product line that you offer. So now you're going to go from being great at SEO to kind of good at paid until we learn it. Most guys or women don't want to be kind of good at something when they're great at something else. So what do you do about that? Well, you could spend a bunch of your own money to try to build that out, or you could find a place that's doing a lot of that really needs SEO or paid social or email marketing. And then you could be that sliver that fits in there. But keep in mind, they're buying you because they need SEO. All of their other customers now will become clients and customers of yours. That email marketing company I told you about, I think Dean had 60 clients. The buyer had 400 clients and none of them doing email marketing with them. And he said, Todd, if I get 15%, if I get 30% of their customers over the next 2 years, I'll double the size of my business. And they have 4 salespeople out there selling my service because they want to cross-sell. So it's finding the right fit like that makes it really compelling and exciting.
So in most cases, when you help an agency sell, is their company, so their little baby, going to be rebranded under the new business, or do they generally keep the old brand?
That's a great question. To get maximum value for the buyer when they sell, it needs to be a company with a brand. Usually though, for example, the company, my client is ABC Services. they're being acquired by Elite SEO. So usually after the transaction, it'll be ABC Services, an Elite SEO company.
Okay, gotcha.
And then it will transition over 2 or 3 years. Remember, the buyer, in most cases, has just written a check for multiple millions of dollars. The last thing they want to do is set that on fire.
Yeah.
So there's a conversation between both parties to say, what's the best way to maximize value, to retain clients, to stir the waters as little as possible. And so things like that are usually a combined decision.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Cool. And so obviously a lot of our listeners are utilizing fractional team members like us.
Mhm.
And oftentimes you might hear M&A professionals saying, oh, everyone has to be full-time employees within the business. What is your take on that?
It depends on the buyer. And there's a measure in agencies known as utilization rate. I'm not sure if you guys talk about that much. But if you say, so utilization rate, are you familiar with the term?
I'm familiar. Yeah.
So utilization rate is of my 40-hour week. You may not measure, people don't measure, it's hard to run at 100%, right? If your people were busy with client work 40 hours a week, that'd be 100% utilization. If all of your people across the board were running at 100% utilization, that thing's gonna blow up soon, right? People don't
Right.
shoot for 100% utilization because it's impossible, right?
Right.
But there's a utilization rate in there that usually works pretty well. So depending on the size of a larger organization that has 500 employees and somebody has 30 employees and they're using a fractional place, that means the buyer can just absorb all of them. The fractional work that you're doing, the account management work, the things that you're doing now can be picked up by the new buyer and they will reap the additional benefit of that, which makes this a more compelling transaction for them. So after a transaction, you guys would, I would bet, would probably get phased out of that relationship. But somebody that has you as a client, it would be fantastic, right? To know
Mhm.
that if I was selling a business, I would say, listen, these guys might be 1.5 million of EBITDA, but with the outsourced people that they have, that you fit into your organization, within 3 months, this could be a $1.8 million
Mhm.
EBITDA business.
Right. So it's not necessarily a negative, it's an opportunity. They look at it as.
Almost like everything that we see, Taylor, in my business, as like anybody that sells something, could be a negative, could be a positive.
Mm,
But if you understand the business well enough, clearly that is a positive,
right.
clearly.
Clearly. Yeah.
And so I would not let somebody spin it on you that that's a negative at all. Although buyers would try that, I'm sure.
Right. Yeah. Well, this was such a refreshing conversation because I think most lingo out there is just targeting the big businesses who just want to exit and wash their hands and say goodbye. But I think that this is a really awesome opportunity for agencies who are excited about growing their business, but just need more support, need some more resources, and really just want to focus on what they do best. So
If
I
there was
love it.
any, I mean, the thing I hear most often, Taylor, is that people want to go back to the early days. I mean,
Yeah.
when we're doing a transaction, I hear most often they say, if I could go back to just solving client problems, if I could go back to just selling clients, that would be fantastic. And as
Mm-hmm.
soon as I can get back there is when I want to get back there, right? And so this becomes a mechanism to do that. And then it's just a matter of, are the economics right? Like I said, for us, most of our clients have $1 million of EBITDA because that's a threshold that many of the buyers that we work with, we only represent sellers. We never work for buyers. We always and only work for the seller. So, and on our podcast, we talk to a bunch of agency people that have been through transactions and talk about the good and the bad and the ugly. We talk to private equity people, we talk to lawyers, we talk to, so people that want to learn a little bit more about that from a distance can go to Second Bite Podcast and they can listen in there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for coming on and having this
Super happy to be a
conversation.
guest.
So interesting. And I think for most people, most agency owners who come to us, they are an accidental business owner. They were really good at something and then it just kind of snowballed into this big agency. And they're like, I don't want this anymore. I don't know how to do it. And so
Yeah.
this is such a great option to have you in their corner to reach out and kind of get some help, get some support, listen to your podcast, and maybe realizing that there are other options for you other than you don't have to suffer if this isn't the area that you want to be focused in. So thanks so much, Todd. Where can people get in touch with your team or you? Obviously the podcast, but
Yeah, the podcast, Second Bite Podcast is attached to our website. Our company name is Potomac Business Capital. Or you can easily find me on LinkedIn, Todd Taskey, Taskey. So that's probably the easiest way to track me down.
amazing. Thank you so much, Todd.
Thank you, Taylor. It's great to be here.
Cheers to happy clients.